Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, helping driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. And today I'm very excited because I have a special guest, Melanie Woods, on the show from CGL Recruiting. And today we'll be talking about how to get noticed on LinkedIn. What is it that recruiters are looking for when they are searching your profile on LinkedIn? What keywords do recruiters leverage when they're looking at profiles on LinkedIn? And how you can stand out from all the other applicants out there on LinkedIn and in the virtual space. And also, bonus tidbit, how artificial intelligence may play a role as we move forward in your job search. So I'm really glad to have you tune in. If you are just joining in, please say hi, say your name, say where you're from. Love to give you a shout out this morning. Love to say hi to you and answer your questions. When you're joining in, please do not only say who you are and where you're from, but also ask your questions at will. We'll be pausing from time to time to answer those wonderful questions from you. And we're really looking forward to having you participate. I'm very excited about this show. So if you've never seen my smiling face before, my name is Aaron Urban or Coachy Urban. You can find out more about me at coachyurban.com. And learn more about me also on YouTube. I have a podcast called the Career Coffee Chat Podcast on all the major channels. And if you love this show, and I hope you do, and you want to share it with other job seekers, please do feel free to share this show. You can do it actually right now if you like. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to you Melanie Woods. Now, Melanie is an experienced recruiter. She has been an HR professional with over 25 years of experience, and her areas of expertise include HR consultant, talent management, strategic planning, developing human capital management systems, as well as cross-functional team building and coaching management teams. And I also want to let you know that she has an awesome YouTube channel where she gives lots of free job search advice to job seekers at this very challenging time. And I would love to say hi to Curtis. Curtis, great to see you, tuning in from KC. All right, great to have you on. Paula, great to see you from Kansas City as well. Good morning, BGM. BGM is in the house. Let's see, we also have someone from Denver. Sorry, LinkedIn doesn't always tell me what your name. Sorry about that. And we also have someone from Nigeria. Thank you for tuning in. Without further ado, I'm bringing to you Melanie Woods. Hi, Melanie. Great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me on today. I'm looking forward to our coffee chat.
Yeah, me too. So we've got a ton of people already signed in from Denver, Kansas City. We've got Venice Elder just tuned in from Houston. And Neelam, she says hi. And I'm bad with names, by the way. You can blame my grandfather. And the reason my name is Aaron and not Elspeth, yes, that was originally going to be my birth name. Elspeth. Blah, 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 blah. And my mother knew my grandfather could never pronounce that. So I ended up being Aaron instead of Elspeth. So I'm Aaron Elspeth.
I'm thinking Melanie's pretty good now.
So I'm bad with names. I blame my grandfather. God rest him. He's a wonderful man. Jason says hi. Art, nice to see you. Cindy, lovely to have you on the show. So Melanie, I'm really excited about this Career Coffee Chat. We were chatting backstage a little bit about how it's such a tough time for job seekers. It's important for job seekers to understand that while this is a challenging time, there is a tiny light at the end of the tunnel, and know that the challenges you experience as a job seeker, it's not personal, okay? It's not your fault, right? And some of the tips we'll be talking about today is, hey, how important is LinkedIn? I'd love to hear from you, Melanie. From a recruiter standpoint, how important is LinkedIn to the job seeker, and how can you leverage it?
It is, oh my goodness, LinkedIn is the behemoth in the market. And for those of you that may not be aware, there is 800 million profiles that are now on LinkedIn. And actually just yesterday, last night, I was looking with some people of what was the last 7 days as to how many people joined. And there was an additional 4 million. So if you think some people are saying LinkedIn is going down and it's not going to be as popular, nothing is supporting that, right? And
Right.
that's why Microsoft paid $22 billion for LinkedIn just 2 years ago. So it is the absolute critical piece for your job search, and not just your job search when you're out of a job, but your career throughout your entire life. LinkedIn at the moment there's a little one in China and a little one in Germany, but LinkedIn is the behemoth that you need to be on and committed to every single day.
Right. And so from a recruiter standpoint, let's just say I'm an earnest job seeker. I've got my profile nailed. I think I've done a really good job. I talk about some things I've done. I got some roles and responsibilities in there. Probably have my position title in my headline. The usual, because LinkedIn will trick you. And if you even change your headline, LinkedIn will sometimes trick you into changing your headline to your current position title. So that happens. And I want to say hi quickly to David and Holly and Gerald. Thanks for tuning in. Daryl says two of my faves. All right. Great to see you, Daryl. So from your perspective, Melanie, I'd love to hear, what do recruiters look for? And well, before we get there, how often do recruiters use LinkedIn to find candidates?
So LinkedIn it's the only system that's out there on the market that allows recruiters and companies to get to both active candidates, which are ones that are posting against positions, and passive candidates, which are those that are just out there for the betterment of their career and networking. And so it's utilized unbelievably. Some studies have shown that it's up to 94% of recruiters and companies now utilize LinkedIn as their primary recruiting tool. And if you consider the cost of all these, independent systems, if you buy into RigZone or Monster or Indeed, those are all just those active candidates. And so more and more companies are going to LinkedIn and utilizing that as their primary. And so how often do we use it? It is the go-to for all of us. And a lot of people have a different applicant tracking system that they use that partners with LinkedIn. But there are also lots of individuals, including myself and my team, that we actually use LinkedIn Recruiter even as our applicant tracking system, where we can pull in stuff even if you apply to a website or somewhere else into LinkedIn. So as they offer more and more options for companies, you're going to see that continue to grow and skyrocket with the use of LinkedIn on recruiters.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It is very, very true. Every recruiter I know is on LinkedIn every day, pretty much. And some studies have shown that if a recruiter, internal or external recruiter, finds a candidate on LinkedIn, they're much more likely to put that candidate forward, even over an arguably slightly more qualified candidate that applied through traditional means. It's the hunter-gatherer mentality. What would you say about that? If I found them, they're mine,
So you have to know your audience, right? And so there's the difference between recruiters that are inside of companies, like talent acquisition people, and recruiters that work for firms. And a lot of the ones that work for firms, they get paid based on getting the candidate, that person getting an offer, accepting it, and starting with the company and staying, right? And so it drives certain behaviors. It's just like a salesperson. It drives the same behavior. So they are very motivated to get to those people that are going to close it down so they can put food on their table like everybody else. So I'm not surprised by that study at all that they would do. And the other amazing thing about LinkedIn is we get so much more data on a candidate than just the resume and the cover letter or even the portfolio. Because your resume, there is a limit to how long your resume can be, right? You can't come in with a 12-page resume. There's no limit on LinkedIn. And, there's some people that have this debate of, don't put that much information and data on LinkedIn, keep it short. And I just want to go to them and say, what are you telling people? It's a computer search engine, and more is more when you're looking at LinkedIn. So the more data you fill out, the more information we have as recruiters and companies to look at you, and the better your chances of coming up in the search. And when you have 800 million people on LinkedIn, it's all about the search. You can't find anybody anymore unless you utilize the search. And I even will say that goes, even if I place an advertising or a job posting on LinkedIn, I still have to use the search filters because it can be 48 hours and I'll have 1,000 candidates apply. And it's nice that the internet makes everything so easy for candidates to hit that easy apply button. But the reality is you get people from all over the world for a position that maybe doesn't have relocation, or they don't have any of the skills needed, right? So you do need to utilize all those search filters, which is why more is more.
Right. Great point. So if you have not filled out all these sections on your LinkedIn, made a really great an about section, a statement, introduction to yourself, and what you will do for a lucky company that will hire you. And if you're a project professional, you can add projects. I mean, there is so much detail and depth to your LinkedIn profile that just can't fit into a resume. And your LinkedIn is truly your online dossier. So let's see, we have some folks tuning in from YouTube. So someone says, it's SKW, nice to meet you as well. Amy says, always enjoys Melanie's videos. Great to see you. Great to see you too, Amy. Glad to have you on. And let's see, Matthew's tuning in from Houston. We have Cornisha. Hi, Cornisha. Good to see you. Someone from LinkedIn said, does LinkedIn Premium increase your visibility, or is it more of a benefit for the user for an added feature? So good question, because there are a lot of premium users out there. And does that really matter? And what else can you do?
So that is a great question, right? Because as a job seeker, you have to decide where you're going to spend your money, right? Because there's people throwing things at you all the time. And as far as from the recruiting and company side and looking at how we get to you, having a LinkedIn Premium account does not matter. It does not give us any additional way to get to you. But as a job seeker, it does give you a lot of visuals. It lets you see more information on who's viewed your profile. So there are a lot of definite advantages for the job seeker. It's just a matter of, is it the right move for you? I would say, though, if you're looking at it, make sure you don't qualify for one of the free programs. I think it's pretty well known by everybody that vets and people in our military qualify for 12 months of LinkedIn free. But what's not known as much is so does their spouses. And so if you are a spouse of somebody in the military, you're having to move a lot, and you also qualify for 12 months free of LinkedIn Premium. You can just Google to find out how to get that.
That's great insight. Thank you for sharing that, Melanie. I had no idea. I love it. I'm learning things. Because it is a myth. So when we talk about LinkedIn Premium, people think that, well, you'll rise above other people in searches, but sounds like that's not the case. So if that's your only reason for leveraging Premium, that might not be a good metric for you as a job seeker. However, it does give you some insights into who's viewed your profile, should you want to expand your network, like Melanie said, and leveraging those end mails to reach out directly to recruiters or hiring managers as you see fit. So Victoria said, hi, nice to see you, Victoria. Let's see, SKW from YouTube says, I have a problem with ghosting. What's the point, especially in times like now? Well, I don't know about Melanie, but I do understand that recruiters have so many people applying, and know there's a difference between CGL recruiting, like Melanie's boutique firm, and big box recruiters, and how they handle candidates is much different.
Ghosting is definitely an issue, and here's what I would say to you. It's never okay for a company to ghost you if you have done like an interview with them or been contacted or reached out. If you're considering ghosting, though, where you applied in for a position and you just didn't hear anything back, sometimes that is just because of the sheer mass of candidates that some companies are getting. And, it can be difficult. But if you did interview and you're thinking, I should at least find out, was I qualified or not, or are you going to go forward? And you feel like you're being ghosted, there's nothing wrong with going around that person and trying to contact the company in a different way. and whether that's the actual company or the recruiting firm. You have to be, careful how you do it. And you don't want to do it by sending 100 emails to everybody that's in the company. But you can do it in an appropriate way, saying, I wanted to, again, say how excited I was about this opportunity. And I'd like to, again, tell you how much I think I'm aligned to your company and your position and would love to hear more. And that's a great and fine way to follow up. So if you're feeling like you're ghosted, you can take the thing in your hands a little bit.
Yeah, take the initiative. Absolutely. I mean, right now it's a competitive job market, so you have to step up a lot in times like these. So great segue into Gerald's question. Can you talk a little bit more about connecting etiquette and how, I'm assuming, you can connect to either recruiters directly or hiring managers directly? And I do know that some companies prefer you to go through their hiring process and not contact hiring managers directly. So just know the company. Take, for example, Halliburton will blacklist you. You don't want to do that. So just if you're working with a small recruiter like CGO, I'm not saying small recruiter, but a boutique firm, and that is compared to like these big box, major multinational recruiting firms, which will ghost you. And it's a little bit different experience, and you'll know because if you talk to Melanie, she's all about helping people, right? So it's a very different approach. But what can people do to connect? And then I'd love to talk about how recruiters what they look for on profiles.
So, there's no doubt that the best way to find a job is always through someone you know. So when you're looking at connecting, it's always best if you don't know somebody in a company or in an area, see who you know that knows somebody else. And LinkedIn used to have a great way to do this, where you could ask for introductions to your second level, and they did away with that feature, which I can't stand because it was so much easier for you as job seekers. But my advice to you would be, whenever you're sending any type of connection request or something, there is that rule of 5. And if you send 5 connection requests and they don't just say ignore, they click on that I don't know option, which is kind of down at the bottom. After 5, LinkedIn shuts down your account and doesn't allow you to send connection requests without having the exact email of the person that you're trying to send it to. So it is always, for that reason, and just for the more personalized approach, to always do a note when you're doing a connection request. And that way the people, you have a chance to form a little bit of a bond right there. And especially if you're doing it, if you can put some kind of grab or question of, I heard that, you guys are interviewing for the following, and I was wondering if I could connect with you, and put some kind of question. Sometimes you'll get a response back that opens a dialogue. So that is definitely helpful. And then your second part of your question was, what do recruiters look for when they're going through the profiles? So we do have a video that's out there that shows you all of the search filters on LinkedIn Recruiter. And if you have not seen all of those, I highly recommend it, because in order for you to understand how to position yourself best for recruiters, it's really great for you to know what we get to look at and what we get to search you by. And I'll give you some examples of course, that hashtag open to work, which people are like, oh, I don't want to turn it on at all. I don't want to let people know. That is a hugely used search filter by recruiters that will take a search from 40 million, candidates that come back down to 5 million. And so it's one that you definitely want to have turned on if you're looking for a job. But there's lots of other things that we look at on LinkedIn, especially, that are kind of hidden. So, for example, the more that you engage with a company's brand, you can come up in a search. The more that you are active on LinkedIn, there is a spotlight search feature that we get to use that says we want people who are more likely to respond. And where you're going to see that used a lot by recruiters is especially in those big box recruiters where their recruiters are paid commission. Remember, they don't get any money if they don't land you in a job. So they want people who are going to respond to them. So if you're not active on LinkedIn, you fall out of that search.
That's important to know. So these are all really great tips. And if you're wondering what active means on LinkedIn, that doesn't just mean liking. Unfortunately, it would be nice. I can like 20 things today. Like. No, it doesn't work that way. It would be nice. You do need to engage. So when Melanie posts something, or I post something, or if someone in your network posts something that's meaningful to you, you probably want to actually comment on that. And again, commenting is not just great share, thanks. Rule of thumb is this: it needs to be at least 5 words and have some sort of meaningful content. And LinkedIn's algorithm will pick up on that and then start noting you as a profile who is more engaged, because LinkedIn does obviously, give benefits to their members who are active. So that makes sense. So I know that we had a quick question about what ghosting is from Cindy. She said, hey, what is ghosting? Well, ghosting is when you just don't hear back. So you had a couple of emails, maybe even an interview, and it's crickets. That's ghosting. And it's not a great thing to do to people at all, because one, you have no feedback to understand how you did in that interview, or what you could have done better, and it's just really frustrating, and it's demoralizing. But just know this, for you as a job seekers, usually it is not personal. Okay, it's nothing you've done wrong. So let's just get that off the table. Let's see. Amy said, I've not heard about the I don't know option. Scary. Definite incentive to include an intro message. So yes, you definitely want to do that, because you can go to what I call LinkedIn jail.
And if you do end up going to LinkedIn jail, there is hope. So it's not for the rest of your life. You just have to contact LinkedIn help. And just to turn me back on message is not going to do it. You have to really say, I'm very sorry. I've learned my lesson. I actually had it happen to one of my team. Is that when we first came across it years ago, and we learned about it. So you can get it back. You're just going to have to really say, please, LinkedIn.
Yeah. I've had some colleagues who do business on LinkedIn, and of course, one of the ways they do business as an entrepreneur is to link to a whole bunch of people, and get too many of those I don't knows, and all of a sudden you go to LinkedIn jail and you have to beg, plead for forgiveness. What's interesting though is LinkedIn actually does have a feature called sales something, and it's a selling tool in LinkedIn that goes against its own guidelines. So it's a little ironic, but anyway. So let's see. Art has a great question here. And how much do we worry about our privacy information being collected to data mining companies that could be used by the government or other entities to build profiles of populations for psyops targeting? Well, I don't know if you really want to worry about that.
The only data that really can be, I think some people put on, which they shouldn't, is your birth date. You don't ever want to put, and even if you think you just put your month and your day of your birth, but then you put your year of high school graduation. Well, guess what? They now have your birthday because they can figure that out. So that's the only data that I think is really concerning to me, that you need to make a choice on the privacy. I'm more concerned about, your passwords and stuff that you're utilizing. And we did some research into this to actually try and find the, passwords that we use the most, and looking at different studies. And it's crazy because so many people have, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as their password. And so lots of companies use password spraying, where they try the top 10 passwords on your profile. And if you have one of those, they can get in. So please make sure you are doing a very unique password so nobody can get your data.
Yeah, make sure it's, at least 8 to 9, 10 characters and some sort of combination that only you can figure out, hopefully. But as far as data scraping tools, LinkedIn is pretty vigilant about making sure that there aren't too many data scraping bots. Now, there are some that are plugged into their sales tool that LinkedIn does have. So LinkedIn has several tools. One of those is Recruiter that we're focused on right now, but there is a sales tool, and both of those are quote unquote data mining tools, but they're sanctioned by LinkedIn, if you will. So as far as those concern, personal information is not that readily available, but Melanie is right. You don't want to have your birth date on there for obvious reasons. People can set up a dummy profile for you, and that's not good. Gail asked if a screening company recruiter says you are being forwarded onto a Houston team, but it will take approximately 3 weeks before you'll hear anything. Wow. How long should you wait before you reach back out? Good question. That's a really long time. Thank you, Gail, for asking that.
That's crazy. That is absolutely that a screening company is saying it's going to take 3 weeks before you hear something else, especially in today's market. Now, if they're telling you that the company is going to be looking at other candidates and something, that's fine. But I'm a little wary of somebody who calls you and says that they're just a screening company. That sounds like somebody that's more fishing for data than a real firm. I'd do some research on them.
Yes, absolutely. And there are a lot of scammers out there, FYI. Particularly now, they're taking advantage of the situation, unfortunately. I've had some clients reach out to me and say, hey, I'm getting some emails from potential fake jobs. It sounds too good to be true. If they ask you to pay for anything, or if they're asking for a lot of personal information, don't give it to them. Take, for example, Melanie, what information do you actually need from a job seeker to put them in front of a candidate?
So I need your resume, right? I need information about, that's contact data. I do not need, nor do I want your birth date, your social security number, anything, your mother's maiden name. So any information like that is sensitive. Now, I have heard about some companies utilizing your last 4 digits of your social security number as an identifier in their system, is what they're telling and saying. I'm going to tell you that I truly believe anybody that's asking for that is a scam, because that's not enough numbers in order to make it reasonable to keep you separate from the thousands and thousands of people that are in an applicant tracking system. So I would not release any of that information to anybody. And the other scam that's happening a lot right now is people are saying, we're so glad you look great, and they're offering jobs before they've even been interviewed. So, I mean, if you want a red flag, that's about as high up as you can get on the red flags. If you haven't done an interview and they're offering you a job and then all of a sudden they want this data from you, that is a scam, and you should walk away and report them as well.
Right. Great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So let's go back here to LinkedIn. Someone from LinkedIn says, to both of us, is the mechanical engineering market more focused on senior and entry level? I'm not seeing much in the middle career space at this time, honestly, right now. So let's just talk about job search trends in general. So pandemic notwithstanding, right now in August and about mid-September, the job search market is typically historically slow. And with the virus, it is really slow. So don't lose hope. There are opportunities out there. If you are looking in oil and gas, for example, just know that it's a slow comeback. They're talking late Q1, fingers crossed, for oil and gas to come back. And as far as the rest of the market, you will start to see more positions later on in the fall. So now's a great time to prepare. Check out Melanie's YouTube videos about job seeking and her tips and tricks, and of course take advantage of some of the opportunities that I have. I have a sale coming up on my resume mastery course, which it can be found on my website under courses. So let's see, what else do we have here? We have some other questions, and then I definitely want to get talking about what other tips do you have as a recruiter that job seekers can take advantage of in their LinkedIn profile that will help you help them, right?
So I would like to, if you don't mind, that person who asked about the engineering, I will tell you in general what I'm seeing, not only in our job market, but in the companies that we provide services to. There is definitely a shift right now to the generalist as opposed to the specialist. So if you are, if you're an organometallic scientist, you might want to consider on your resume broadening out some of your skills, because as a lot of companies have had to shrink their headcounts, they're looking for individuals that can be a little bit more diverse in what they can offer to the organization, as opposed to some of them having such specialist roles in the past.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's good to know, because we've always heard that being a generalist is a bad thing and we should niche. And in this market, and it is very true, employers will be, because they're lean operating machines right now, they'll be asking their staff to step up and take on responsibilities that previously you've had 2 or 3 or 4 different people to do. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. Gerald asked for the advice on LinkedIn profile pics to use, not to use. Oh, but we've seen some that are great, haven't we, Melanie?
Oh my goodness. Please go for the professional picture. And, what I always tell people is if you're thinking it's something that's going to look great on Facebook, it's probably not good for LinkedIn. Please try to have one that's going to represent you the best way that you want. And another thing I always tell people is whether you're on a video interview or you're even doing your LinkedIn profile picture, your eyes are your window to your soul. And people are drawn to your eyes. So if you have a picture where you're so far back, or you're doing a video interview where your eyes can't be seen, you're losing that opportunity to form any sort of that bond. Mm-hmm. So I do recommend you do the headshot. Don't do the far back picture where you're on your boat on the lake with your 3 dogs and the beer in your hand. It's not your best photo for LinkedIn.
Right. Yeah. You definitely want to keep it professional. And I recommend a professional photographer, but if you are short on cash, you do not have to have a professional photographer. You can, on a nice cloudy day or in the shade, you want to make sure your background's not overexposed. Okay. You want a nice lighting, but stand in front of some greenery that's not distracting. Dress as if, and take a couple different shots, typically not a mug shot. Maybe a nice 3/4, smile, show the teeth. Have people see your eyes. So if it's too bright outside, it may be difficult for people to see your eyes because they're squinting, right? So Melanie has some really great points. People need to see your eyes. So you definitely want to have something that is a little bit closer in. Just know that you can upload a fairly large profile photo, so as far as pixel size, into LinkedIn, and then you can crop it and adjust it, make tweaks within the LinkedIn space. I do profile sharing for my clients, so I'll share their profile because that's a feature on LinkedIn now. Yay, LinkedIn, that was a good one. And you need a larger pixel size for it to bring up your photo, which is very helpful. So let's see, James asked, how much personal information do you need to give a recruiter consulting firm when discussing relocating for a position? So that's a good question. I haven't worked out those details yet, but I'm chasing a job because it's a great fit. Good for you. Good for you going for the job. So when it comes to relocation, Melanie, what advice do you have for James to help him out?
So relocation has changed over the past 10 years. It used to be that companies would buy your house, right? And then the housing market crashed and a bunch of companies got stuck with a bunch of properties that they got a total loss having to take on. So that kind of went away, and we went more and more towards the lump sum relocation. Now what we're seeing again is, with this great reset, is a level setting of people not wanting to offer relocation at all because there's so many people in the market locally, or those that are, it's for very high, specialty positions. So if you're going down that path, first of all, assume you're looking lump sum and maybe help with, moving goods. You're not looking at the old style relocation. And then if you are willing to relocate yourself or do it for a smaller sum and you really want that job, there's nothing wrong with having that conversation. Now, you do need to make sure, the same way when you're talking about salary, that you're not undercutting yourself, right? But if you're feeling that hesitation from the company of, relocation is not something, you need to step forward and say what you are willing to do, because it's just not being offered as much as it is. I mean, we used to have tons of positions with relocations, and I have one right now that's willing to offer relocation, and that's it.
Right. And remote work is now becoming more prevalent as well. So it's kind of taking the place of relocation to a certain degree. But with companies and businesses being economically uncertain, they're less likely to put themselves at risk or pay to relocate someone. And I don't know, Melanie, your thoughts on this, but oftentimes if someone is interested in seeking out-of-state positions, I'll have them put open or willing to relocate. Willing means you'll pay for it. Open means they will hopefully negotiate something with you. So just know that there's a difference there. And willing means and you'll take the responsibility. So that sets up, the expectation from the internal and external recruiter that they know right away that, hey, this person is just pretend like they are in state if you're a great candidate for the role. So fingers crossed for you, James.
I will tell you, a lot of people are giving advice that if you're willing to relocate anywhere, to change your primary location in LinkedIn to United States. And I actually don't recommend doing that. I think that backfires on you, because relocation is a very sensitive topic right now for companies as they're trying to hit their bottom line. And so it's fine to put that under the open to work area as one of the locations, but I don't recommend you change your primary, because people may pass over your profile. As there's a view that we have when we look at you through LinkedIn Recruiter called Flip View, and you get to see just a real small amount about the person. And that is one of the things you see. And so the data there's got to entice the person to click on it to look at your full profile. And I'm afraid when you have United States, in fact, people are going to flip through you to the next one.
Right. Or you may not even show up if they do a location-based search. Is that right, Melanie?
That United States one is so funky. And I'm a big tester in LinkedIn. I think everybody who knows me knows that. I'm always testing things. And I have had people fall out of searches when they choose United States as their primary location, and they shouldn't. But I can't tell you the rhyme or reason of that. LinkedIn's not very forthcoming on some of those algorithms to location. In fact, a set of job seekers and I actually found a LinkedIn error that has a glitch on the location, which has to do if you're in a major city and there's like Houston and Greater Houston, or Dallas and Dallas Metroplex, that we got online. LinkedIn got on a live thing with us. We tested through with them. They saw the error, and they've been working on coming out with a patch for it, which is supposed to be released in September.
Yeah, so, fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yes.
So you definitely want to use, if you're in the Houston or a greater metro area, probably that greater Houston or Houston in general.
Use the central one. Instead of using Greater Houston, use Houston. And it's my recommendation until they get that patch fixed, because otherwise you might fall out of searches you're going to want.
Right. So for example, if you're in Spring or Katy, you probably want to use Houston, and you can just use the central Houston zip code in the meantime. And then hopefully into September, you can switch it to something else.
We'll try to give everybody an update on that when we see they're supposed to follow back with us to let us know when the patch is applied.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. By the way, thank you for being such an avid tester of LinkedIn, because that's hugely helpful for all of us to help job seekers get real results in their job search. And speaking of real results, what is the top 2 or 3 most popular searches that recruiters do in LinkedIn? I mean, I'm sure people will probably want to know so they can be prepared. Is it all about keywords? What actually matters for those searches?
So it is all about keywords. And I would say specifically it's about key skills. And if you think of the way that we're having to go in those systems and look at those keywords, you want to focus on ones that are hard skills as opposed to soft competencies. Mm-hmm. If I go in and do, communication as a search parameter, everybody comes up, right? So the more specific a keyword is, the more it's going to narrow down my search. So when you look at a job description, the first thing I always say is, if you can see where it's got preferred requirements and then it has ones that are absolute must requirements, anything that's under that absolute must requirement is going to be something that's going to come up on a search term. So if they're a mechanical engineer and they absolutely have to have SolidWorks, then SolidWorks is going to be a search filter that's absolutely going to be entered. It's a no-go. Another one that's very popular is languages. And so if you have anybody on a job description has said, Spanish speaking required, they're not going to want to show anybody that doesn't speak Spanish. That's absolutely going to be a search term. So you need to make sure that if you have that on LinkedIn, you have entered in that you have that under the language. And then the others are, of course, what you would imagine. When we type in a search, and, last night we were doing this with a group where we went in and typed mechanical engineer, and out of the 800 million profiles, it came back with 49 million. And so the next searches that start happening after that are definitely location. People mainly look location first. And then after you get to location, if it's a position that has a degree requirement or a degree, a certification that's required, like a CPA for a controller or a PE license for a certain type of engineer, that is going to be something that is very, very high up in the search filters.
That's helpful. That's helpful. And I tell my clients, leverage your job descriptions. Get several job descriptions, take the median. What are the common keywords or lingo or expertise, their language, and what do they say? Because again, you might be a subject matter expert, I'm sure you are, and you know what it takes, but we need to be relevant to those job descriptions in order to show up in these searches, because recruiters are using those to search for you. So it's very important that you align and be relevant to those job descriptions. We have some great questions coming in. Go ahead. Sorry.
I saw something. Somebody sent me something last night with a question, and I was so upset after I read it, saying that somebody else had given them advice to go out and form a group of people that they would all endorse each other for skills. And even though they didn't know the skills, they didn't even know the people, and to just do it. And that way they get all these endorsements, and that's going to make it so that you come up higher in the search and you're going to get a job with recruiters. And so having been somebody that's worked in the system and tested the system, it does not, endorsements, if you have the 99 plus, it does not make you come up higher than the other people. And the other thing is, that's just flat out unethical. And you need to treat your LinkedIn profile, it's not a legal document, either is a resume, but it is something that you're not falsifying data or information will stop you from going forward in the process. So for those that are getting that advice or feedback, do not endorse somebody for skills unless you have actually seen, observed, and can feel like you can put your name behind that person having that skill.
Right. Great point. Thank you, Melanie. And you are also, take, for example, Jason is asking, what's the best way to highlight transferable skills? And a lot of people are seeking to pivot out of their current role into a different role. And sometimes these are, not that straightforward. How can you, do that ethically? And one of the ways is you are welcome to choose your own skills under skills and endorsements and put them in there. You're certainly welcome to do that. And you're also welcome to pick your top 3. You can do that as well. And you can actually reorder them now, which thank you, LinkedIn, because you couldn't do that before. And it was really frustrating. It drove me nuts. So I'm really glad you have more functionality there. But also leverage, I don't know if you agree, Melanie, but your about section. What are you going to say about yourself? Can you draw the conclusion for the person reading your resume or your LinkedIn information? Can you draw that conclusion for them? Because here's the deal. People are overwhelmed right now, particularly recruiters. I mean, everybody is. Job seekers, recruiters, everybody's really overwhelmed right now. So let's make it easy for everybody. Draw the conclusion. If you know these skills will transfer, say as much in a nice professional way so you help walk people through the journey. Would you agree, Melanie, that that's a good tactic? And what other advice do you have?
I absolutely agree with that. And you even know as a resume expert that that's the key to a good resume, right? Is you're walking people down through your story, your experience, your expertise. It's no different with your LinkedIn profile. And this is the industry setting is one of the big failings that I think LinkedIn has. You only get to choose one industry. And most people don't even remember that they chose it because they did it when they set up their profile originally. So if you haven't looked at that lately, definitely go out to your profile and look and see what industry you have set. And if you have oil and gas set, that may not be putting your best foot forward because there's a search that attaches to that. Let's say you're a supply chain person. Instead of choosing oil and gas, you might want to choose logistics and supply chain as your industry. And then the second way to kind of get around that industry thing, because LinkedIn only lets you choose one, is recruiters and companies know that you only have that one choice. So when we're looking people for industries, we a lot of times go to the keyword search and we'll enter in like automotive or aviation there. So if you don't actually have any experience in those industries, how do you still come up in those searches? Exactly what Erin said, which is utilize your about section. And it's very easy to put a statement in there of saying, while I've worked in the oil and gas industry, I am very open to working in automotive, aerospace, healthcare, industrial. And when you list out those other industries, the search doesn't know the difference. And so either way, you come up in the search, and then you might catch the eye of a recruiter saying, oh, this person is a great match. I'm glad that they're open to our industry, and hopefully reach out to you.
Right, and even help that recruiter see how those skills transfer. So if you're talking about a career accomplishment, for example, and you may have made that accomplishment during your time in oil and gas or a different engineering firm, you can say equally transferable in areas of these blah, blah, blah industries, right? So that probably answers. Eric also asked a very similar question. How do you match specific job skills to the job description while trying to highlight your innovative talent and flexible talent? So in other words, how to match those job skills, how to be relevant, how to walk people through the journey, because it's important that we help draw those conclusions and make it obvious for people, make it easy so the recruiters can help you help them, right?
Absolutely.
Let's see here. We've got some other questions. I was reading here. Let's see. Got a panel. We got a couple of interview questions. We'd like to tackle that right at the end if that's okay. So any other advice you have, Melanie, as a recruiter to help people leverage their online presence? And what role might artificial intelligence play in the future for job seekers?
So, artificial intelligence is coming fast, and it's already there. You may be thinking you're talking to a person, and you're not in some instances, especially where we see a lot of it is in the texting. And so you'll text in, or you'll get a text from a company saying, hey, we received your resume, had a question, and you think you're responding back and forth with the person, and you're not. I personally, I have a real bad feeling about AI. I don't love it. The recruiting process is broken already. You all know it as job seekers. We all know it as HR and recruiting. As we've tried to keep up with the internet and how it's adjusted and changed everything, what we've lost is people feel more and more like a number. And we've lost the opportunity to get that more and more personal touch and personal feeling with you. So having that AI that is interfacing with you and you may not even know it, to me, it makes it even further away. It's like another one that's coming, you may have seen, some of you are getting requests to do a one-sided interview.
Yes.
And I am not a fan of those either, because you end up, not getting a chance to interface with somebody and see how they're responding to what you're saying, to be able to explain more or have that conversation. But it's here, and so you do need to make the best out of it that you possibly can. A lot of times when you see those questions as you're applying for jobs, where it's even asking you, do you have at least this many years of experience? Those are gating questions where a computer in the back is deciding which bucket you go into. So if you're seeing those and you feel like you have something that's going to trip you up in one of those questions, and I'll give you a great example of this. I know somebody who came from the UK, and he was applying for a controller role, and the position was requiring a CPA, and he didn't have a CPA. He had the UK equivalent, and it's like a GRP. I think it's a GRP. It escapes me at the moment, but he had that, which is the absolute equivalent to a CPA, and he had been working in US GAAP for the last 20 years. And so when he would go against the system, it's actually pulling him out as not a good candidate. So if you have that type of scenario where you're hitting up against the AI and the different tracking tools knocking you out, you're going to have to figure out how to go around the system through employer referrals or sending your information through a different method than these other systems and AIs.
Right. And don't be afraid to outsmart the system a little bit. So if they're asking for a CPA and you have the equivalent, just go ahead and say yes, because once you speak to a human being, that gives you an opportunity to hopefully you'll speak to a human being, but that actually gives you an opportunity to further explain. And I have had clients that are doing those one-sided interviews where it's a video, they schedule a time, or they just give you a link. Yep. You log in, and they have questions, and you are to answer them as if. And it's very difficult. And some of these also have facial recognition software. They're trying to analyze what your mood is during that time. So we have a couple of questions about how to win an interview, which is a whole other workshop.
That's good. More than a couple minutes.
Yeah, we've only got a couple more minutes. But basically, my best advice for anyone on visual media. You'll notice that neither one of us are sitting still and doing this the whole time and not really engaging. We're moving around, we're engaged, we're bringing it. So I encourage you, even if you're not a person who really is very emotive, which is, expressing your emotions easily, I encourage you for that window of opportunity to really bring it to the interview. Bring your personality. Smiling is important. You'll notice that at no time did I do this, unless I was actually reacting emotionally to something someone said. So you need to smile, because that helps people engage with you and feel like you are more approachable and likable as a person, which at the end of the day, that's kind of what makes the decision, unless you're just talking to robots, of course. So
practice. If you're doing anything interviews, you practice the questions, get a fellow job seeker and interview each other. We do have lots of videos that cover interviews, but the key to it 100% is practice.
Mm-hmm. And Gerald asked a great question. He said, how sophisticated is the LI search? Solution architect versus solutions. The plurals is it sophisticated enough to figure it out, plurals? Or now keep in mind, some applicant tracking systems will figure out plurals, and newer ones will. However, it doesn't necessarily figure out other words that mean the same thing. That helps. Any insights there, Melanie?
No, I think you're exactly on. LinkedIn is pretty good about it. And, even though sometimes I'm doing a search for a job title, depending on how I do that search, I can look at just the job title field, or I can look anywhere within the profile and the about section. So if the big thing I think that trips people up the most in that is when they use acronyms, because you should put the acronym, but then also put in like parentheses and then write it out. So that you're capturing it both ways. But LinkedIn is pretty smart on that one, and you should be okay.
Yeah, that's very, very important, particularly for those folks who work in an industry that has a lot of acronyms. You definitely want to spell it out, not just for the computers, but for human beings too, because they have no idea. And it starts looking like a military something. So Gail asked a question for you, Melanie. Is there a video on how to add your transition position? So those temporary roles, intern roles that we're taking, because we need to pay the bills. Is there a way? I call them bridge positions. Is there a proper way to put those in LinkedIn and have them allocated as such to the recruiters or whomever's viewing that?
Yeah, you need to be careful, because you don't want it to undermine your career flow when they're looking at it. So, Gail, one of the videos that you will find out on our site is how to represent the COVID gap on your resume. And so in there, we do talk about, if you have a survival job, how you can show that and put it in there without actually undermining the flow of your career. This is not common times, right? During the Great Depression, we had 660,000 people apply for unemployment, and we thought that was catastrophic. And we've had well over 25 million. So everybody is aware of what's gone on today. But 10 years from now, you're going to have a whole population enter the workforce who only remembers this as, I didn't have to go to school from spring break until the rest of the year. And that's going to be their entire recollection. We had to stay inside a lot, right? So for that population that's going to come forward and will be in a lot of these lower level recruiter and sourcer roles, you want, if your break is more than 4 to 6 months, you want to put something on there showing what the break was and showing how you still made progress in your career and your profession during that time frame. So Gail, that video will definitely help you with that.
Yeah, volunteering is important. Continuing education is important. If you had a bridge position, I definitely encourage you to check out the videos with CGL Recruiting and Melanie. Melanie, I'm sure you can probably add it in the comments later on exactly how to get to those YouTube videos and your particular channel. Be happy also, if you want to give that to me, I'll add it to the event description so everybody gets notified of that. So definitely want to connect with Melanie on LinkedIn if you haven't already, to make sure you get access to those videos, And we do have quite a few more questions coming up. And someone asked, is this being recorded? Absolutely. This is being recorded and will be available on LinkedIn in the replay. If there are any questions that we could not get to, just know that we will come back and we will answer your questions, and we will tag you so you get notified of and those answers. All right. And I really appreciate all of you joining in. And right before we wrap up, because we did promise a bonus top interview questions, maybe one or two top interview questions that you can give people to what they can expect. What are those?
So I'd like to cover one of the hard ones because it's one of the ones I get asked all the time, which is, what is your greatest weakness, or what is your, area for development? And that just drives people crazy because they don't know what to answer. And I did a mock interview with somebody recently, and she gave me one, and then she gave me another, and then she gave me another because she was so nervous about the question. And so I always like to give advice on that one. And that is, we all have weaknesses. You just need to, the one that you choose to highlight for this question needs to be one that does not undermine your candidacy for the job. And so I'll give you a real example from me. So when I was earlier in my career and before on the HR side, I had labor relations experience. When I was applying for a job, well, I knew that that company didn't have any unions or anything. So when they asked me that question of, what do you think is an area of weakness? I said, well, as an HR person, I think there's still more for me to learn on the union side because I don't have a lot of experience with that yet. And it was a very valid and true weakness, but I had done my research in advance to know that it wasn't going to undermine me for the position. So if you can do that and have 3 or 4 options available for different companies, and again, it's about practice, 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 it will definitely make it easier for you to do that question. And then my second question that I always like to ask people, and for a couple of reasons, is give me 3 words or phrases that describe you professionally. And I always am curious because this is where I get to understand the soft competencies of the person that I'm interviewing and what they feel are their greatest strengths. And it's very interesting, the information that you can get. And I'm not the only one that asked that question. So I do recommend, if you haven't prepped that you think, what are your 3 greatest strengths, and have examples of where that strength has helped you on a project. Anytime you're interviewing, they're always looking, past behavior and past performance is what's going to translate to future behavior and future success, which is why they ask behavioral-based interview questions.
That's right.
So if you can not only give them what that is, but then give them an actual example where you utilized that top skill or that top competency, you're going to send your point home even further. And if you're really smart and did your research, do it on something that is very applicable to a part of the job description.
Absolutely.
And you're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, relevancy is huge in all aspects, the resume, the LinkedIn, and of course the interview. Well, Melanie, it's been a great pleasure. As I mentioned before, for those of you who have some questions that we haven't answered yet, don't worry, we will answer them. And if you're watching later, if you're watching Career Coffee Chat live show later on, you're watching the replay, if you have a question, pop it in the comments. We will get back to you. We do get notified, and we do care about you. We want to make sure you're successful and empower the right information to see real results in your job search. And as always, it's been a true pleasure to have all of you participating on, and I'm just feel very blessed that I have such great guests like Melanie and with CGL Recruiting. So please do pop over to her YouTube channel and check out her videos. They're awesome and super helpful. And also I have a great sale coming up on my Resume Mastery Makeover course, which is a self-guided course. It's very comprehensive. And if you're wondering how to get through those digital gatekeepers and making sure you meet the job match criteria, this is the course for you. As always, it's been a great pleasure. This is Erin Urban with Career Coffee Chat. You can find more about me at coachyurban.com, and Melanie with CGL Recruiting. Ta-ta for now.